And with that, let's bring in Mark Hamrick, Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Mark, welcome. So let's start with this government shutdown. What impacts could we see from it, Mark, economically?
Good to be with you. It really depends on the length of this shutdown. The last one was a doozy, 35 days, beginning in late 2018, continuing through the early part of 2019. These are regarded as essentially short-term events for the U.S. economy in the sense of the majority of economic activity, which doesn't occur during the shutdown, eventually occurs after it is resolved. But there are plenty of casualties among people who suffer because of this. And so think about contractors who are missing business because the government is shut down. Think of the businesses of all kinds that rely on the federal government, whether they are adjacent, nearby, or do business of another kind. The mom and pop restaurant, the dry cleaner, where a federal worker is furloughed, they're not going there. And of course, the hundreds of thousands of people who are not receiving their paychecks right now, but eventually will. And think about the taxpayer essentially being responsible to pay them for having done nothing through no fault of their own. So in the meantime, by the way, Jenna, we're due to get a jobs report, but we won't get one because the statistical agencies are not able to produce the data that we rely on. And so we're now sort of walking in the dark, not knowing how the economy is performing at a time when the job market's been weakening and the Fed is cutting rates because it's concerned about the lack of strength in the job market.
Yeah, you probably saw this. It's a vibe survey put out by Axios and the Harris poll. It shows Americans say it's harder now to afford groceries than it was a year ago. Mark, of course, you follow inflation very closely. Help us understand why it feels like that and if we could see some relief anytime soon.
Won't see relief anytime soon, I'm sorry to say, Jenna. And the inflation with food has been higher than the overall rate of inflation. If we go back to January of 2020, essentially prices have risen 20% since then, but food prices have risen 23%, and that's the average. So, try buying a steak these days. You may settle for a can of Spam, right? And so this is consistent with the affordability challenges that Americans are facing across the board at a time when the job market's weakening and wage growth is slowing. I think that people do dial in to food prices because they're irritated, for example, aside from the affordability challenges in general, but also see, as we know from the past couple of years, when eggs were spiking, they're paying $8, not 2 or 3, and it just makes them angry that they have to pay more for that. The same with beef and other things. But obviously, broadly, the cost of food is higher, and that causes strain for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. Mark, thank you.